So I'll question the premise in the sense that it's not an incremental game. There was a really interesting GDC talk that I saw a few years ago about cursed problems in game design. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I can describe it briefly. But it's basically when you have a problem where you have two different design values that just fundamentally conflict with each other. And so you have to kind of like, there's no clean solution that will satisfy both of your values. And so in this case, the example is for a satisfying whole game like this, you really want to push in like a lot of volume of stuff. As much stuff as possible, as fast as you can. Right. But then to satisfy this roguelike, like thinky game type thing, you want to be very selective. You want to like, okay, I want to put in this thing and then this thing and then this thing and then this thing. And those things are just fundamentally opposed. And I kind of think of that as a cursed problem, which I only realized relatively recently. Because they're just fundamentally opposed. So I think the idea of it being an incremental game is going to more towards that like volume side of things, and the roguelike thing is going more towards the specific, being more selective about what you're doing.
Okay, well, Jeremy, thanks for joining me. I'm super excited to chat with you because you've actually done just a bunch of cool stuff, and we're going to get into all of those things. But I think a cool place to start before we talk about what you're currently working on and some of the things that would maybe be successful is that you actually had a project that you decided to abandon, or that you kind of made a prototype and put some stuff out, and that was Merchants of the Stars. So can you just tell me a little bit about that project and what it was?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk about my projects here. So Merchants of the Stars was actually my first Godot project. It wasn't my first ever game development project. But I ended up switching from Unity to Godot in the middle of that project. So I had this little like Merchants of the Stars prototype made in Unity, and then they had this whole like pricing fiasco thing a few years ago. And so I decided at that point, because a lot of people were talking about Godot at the time, that I would take the switch because it was still pretty early in the project. And because it was my first project, I mean, it was really my first major project in either Unity or Godot. So it just took a really long time. So I ended up spending around, trying to remember the exact timelines here, but I think it was around 1.5 to 2 years before I even got to the point of having a demo on Steam. This game was basically based on, there was this old iOS game called Harbor Master, which I really liked, where you basically drag around ships with your finger and try to get them to avoid each other and deliver cargo to the docks. And that game had disappeared from iOS. And I kept finding these Reddit threads. Like whenever I would occasionally look it up to see if somebody had made clones of it. And there were a couple of clones, but not that many. And I thought, that's not a very complicated game. I can make something like that. So I decided to make it. I decided to do a space theme. The original Harbor Master was a boat theme instead. And I was really excited. I wanted to do it. It was originally supposed to be a mobile game because it was based on an iOS game. But I was really excited at that point because I'd earlier made a mobile word game, which we can talk about later. And I was really excited to try out Steam. So I thought, okay, I'm making something in now Godot. I really want to make something that I can also put on Steam. So I worked on that for quite a while because I was just basically learning the tools and like learning everything about game development essentially, because I had just come out of a software job and I had to learn how to do the art and the sound and the music and all this kind of stuff. So eventually I managed to get a demo out, which is basically my vision of what I wanted the game to be from the beginning, which was essentially this tap and drag mechanic where your ships come in at the edge of this space field and you can drag them to docks and they'll unload their cargo, you'll get some money, and then they leave. And you're trying to get a certain amount of money. And then there were a few different stages where like there were pirates that if they shot you, then you would lose, or if your ships collided, then you would lose. And then there's one with, I added a couple of other ship types like asteroid haulers, where they would be able to pick up asteroids and then you could deliver those to docks and get money. And that was essentially my vision, my original vision. So I put that up on Steam as a demo. And it was basically, honestly, the game that I had wanted to make originally. And it was a pretty small game. Like it only would take you probably an hour to finish the entire thing. If you wanted to do it all perfectly, like get 3 stars and everything. And I put it in Next Fest, in Steam Next Fest, pretty shortly after that demo was done, and it just didn't perform very well. Like, I went into Netflix with not Netflix, Next Fest with very few wish lists to begin with. But it was my first game, so I didn't really care. I didn't have a lot of knowledge about how Next Fest worked at that point or anything like that. I just wanted to release something. And so I put it into Next Fest. It sort of doubled wish lists. I think it went from around like 150 to around 300 wish lists from Next Fest, which I was pretty happy with. But I'd also seen all this wisdom that if you want to actually make money from games, you're talking more like thousands of wish lists, like maybe 7,000 wish lists. I was like, I have 300, I want 7,000. Maybe this isn't quite the game yet that I need to do that. So I was a little bit at a crossroads, like either abandon it at that point or and do something else that I thought would be more successful, because it didn't seem like it was super connecting with people. Like, it wasn't fulfilling. It didn't have like really long playtime. People would get kind of bored of the mechanics. So I could either abandon it at that point, or I could keep working on it and scope creep it a little bit to make it something a little bit more interesting. And so I actually decided to scope creep it a little bit to try to make it more interesting. And I turned it into more, because it had been more of it felt like a mobile game, basically, because you're just trying to increase your score slowly. Like, you're delivering these things. Every one is worth $1,000. But I decided, well, I'm already making this game about a number going up. I might as well lean into that and make it really a game about a number going up. And so I kind of made it this incremental thing where you'd be able to buy upgrades. And then throughout the course of a run, you'd get random upgrades you could choose from, and some like permanent perks you could buy and stuff like that, which I think made it a much more interesting game. I was really happy with the addition, even though it was just pure scope creep, because I was hoping to make it more attractive. And ultimately, the result of that was, I think, a much better game, but it still just didn't really connect. So I got to the point of, once again, because I had this like sort of brainwave of, I can make this an incremental game. So once again, I got to the point of, I have this game that essentially fulfills my vision, and it's just not really successful. So my choices are either keep working on this and try to like desperately like make it successful, but I don't really know how, because it already fulfills my vision. So I have to come up with something new, or just do something else. So ultimately I just chose to do something else. And I felt pretty okay with it, because ultimately, it was my first Godot project. It was my first really game that I'd gotten to that point of completion. I had done a lot of other games and a mobile game, but nothing that's like on Steam that's to that level of completion, like a fully complete demo that essentially fulfills my vision. So I did abandon it, but I felt okay with that, with the sort of the level I put into it. And I'm not entirely sure I'll never go back to it, because having left it for a long time, now my brain is like, oh, I could do all these different things with it. But
yeah, it sounds like even in this abandonment, it was done with a lot of thoughtfulness, and you probably, I'm assuming, learned a ton. Also very cool to hear your journey coming from software development. How did you actually make that jump? Did you just start kind of doing game dev in your spare time? Did you just fully, did you do the classic, like, saved up a bunch of months of runway and then try to do it full time? Or how did you kind of make the shift? Or are you a hobbyist, or just kind of where are you at in your game dev career?
Yeah, so I'm doing it full time now, but not making money, essentially.
Okay.
Like, not making enough money.
Yeah.
I do make a little bit of money from various sources, but not enough.
Okay.
So there is a bit of savings being used. But basically, when I was a kid, I really, really loved video games. I'm a 90s kid, basically. So I played lots of N64 and Half-Life and Doom and stuff like that. And I was really, really into it. I played a ton of video games until I went to university. And then I ended up going to university I never actually really programmed. Like, I played a lot of, I would say the first programming I ever did was Neverwinter Nights. And I would say that's kind of the first game dev too. So that was a game, for anyone who's not familiar with it, is from the developer of Baldur's Gate. And it's a similar kind of game to Baldur's Gate, but the focus was really on user-created content. So they had this really powerful editor where you could make like an RPG, your own kind of RPG, using their assets. And you could even add your own assets and things like that. And I was super into that when I was a teenager, because it was really, really fun and creative way to engage with video games. And that had a scripting system in it. So that was kind of my first exposure to programming. But I didn't do that much with programming other than that until I went to university. And I actually went to university for math because I was pretty good at math in high school. But I took a programming class in university because you just have to in the first year. And I thought, wow, this is so interesting. Like so much more interesting than the math classes that I was taking. So I just like almost instantly just switched over to the computer science program. And at that point I was kind of busy enough, and also kind of like I feel like I burned myself out a little bit on video games because I played so much as a child that I wasn't that interested in them. I played a ton of Guitar Hero in university, but basically nothing else. But I graduated with a computer science degree. I ended up going to work for Google for like 11 plus years. And at some point, it was kind of an evolution. So over this time, I was kind of interested in Unity, but it was always a bit hard to get into because I just had so many knowledge gaps, and just doing it after work, it was never really the highest priority thing to do.
Yeah.
But eventually, so a couple of years before I left my job there, my parents had been talking about. My entire family is really into this game called Boggle, which is a word game. It's a word board game where you basically competitively try to write down words that you find on the board. It's kind of like a word search. And they were complaining about there being no good Boggle apps, which on any app store, which seems crazy because there's a whole bunch of them. But I tried them all, and they're all actually pretty bad in the sense that they're all just completely full of in-app purchases. Like, it's all really oriented towards getting you to spend money. The dictionaries are terrible, which is really bad for a word game. So there's just a ton of words there that you don't know, that in theory you'd want to get for a good score. And they just kind of were just wrong for what I wanted. So I decided, so this is while I was still working, I decided to make my own version, mobile version of Boggle, which I called very creatively Toggle, which is just based on my like company name is TAU, Tau, plus Boggle equals Toggle.
Love it.
And yeah, there's a theme that my naming of things is kind of terrible, but so what I ended up doing for that, so I wrote it in Flutter, which is it's a cross-platform mobile development framework that Google made, and I just used it because I was working at Google at the time,
cool,
basically. And that was really fun because it's the kind of real game I'd made. I'd played around with Unity a little bit before and a few other things like Pygame many years before. But it was really fun to make the board and do all that kind of stuff. And it was really like a complete labor of love because part of my complaint that I had earlier was that the word lists, like the actual dictionaries that were used in these other versions, were terrible. So I actually literally read the entire, like I got a free list of words that had, it was basically bigger than what I wanted. Like it had every word I know in it, but it also had a lot of other garbage. So I actually read the entire thing and eliminated all the words that I didn't like from the dictionary because I wanted to make something that's good. And I think it worked because that app is extremely well reviewed. Like it has 5 stars it has like 5.0 stars on both the iOS and App Store, depending on how you look. I think sometimes it's like 4.9, but it's basically 5. And to this day, it is quite successful, not monetarily, but user-wise. Like I just looked today to prepare for this, and it has like 600 30-day active users, even though I haven't touched it in years now. And like 100 people use it every day, which is kind of crazy. So it's a bit niche, but it's crazy considering it had no updates. I guess the English language is kind of evergreen, so you don't really need to update it. But
right.
Yeah, so that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, take me into Toggle a little bit in some of the ways that you set it up to be a good game. Is it just a paid game? I mean, you mentioned that a lot of the other apps are, kind of trying to get you with microtransactions. Did you just do a paid game? Is that how you solved that problem? Speaking of making a great game, if you want to level up to make your games better yourself, well, I've got a really exciting opportunity for you. Inside the Dev Dream Discord, Thornity, one of the creators of a game about feeding a black hole, which has now grossed over $800,000, is going to offer us an exclusive presentation exclusively in the Discord. Now, it's completely free to sign up, and it's completely free to get in the Discord as well. It's incredibly generous, and he's even promised that he's going to give us some exclusive thoughts that he has not shared on any of the podcasts he's been on. It's going to be a great way to level up your content and hear from a very successful indie dev himself. This is scheduled for May 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern. This is a live event, so make sure you get inside the Discord and click the interested button to make sure you get notified. All of that's completely free, and you will be able to also ask him questions yourself, as the second half of this presentation is a Q&A. All right, I hope to see you there, and let's get you back to the video.
My attempt to solve it was to just put a banner ad at the bottom. So basically it'll like show your board, and then right underneath there's a banner, a small banner ad, which is not a good ad format and at all. Like usually what you want is like an interstitial ad that covers. That's what most apps these days do. It's like it'll cover the whole screen, or some kind of rewarded ad. I decided those were too annoying, but I wanted to maybe make some money. It's something where like with every project, I think like if this became super successful, I wouldn't want to miss the boat on that. So I had to put something in there. So I put in a banner ad, and it does make money. Like to this day, I make around $1 a day, which is not nothing, but it's not enough to support me at all.
Right.
But it is interesting. And so I feel like I just don't like ads in general. So I wanted to put something in there. I'm sure I could extract more money out of that if I really wanted to, but that's the other reason actually that I really wanted to go to Steam with the next project, is because it's just basically people are normalized to pay versus like watch ads, whereas on mobile basically you can't charge money. I do have an option in the game you can remove even the banner ad with a one-time in-app purchase, but not very many people do that. It's like 10 purchases or something on the order of 10 in the entire lifetime that people have done that. So.
Yeah, that's one of the real challenges I imagine of doing mobile, is that if you're trying to do it in a monetization way, the correct answer, so to speak, is probably to do all the annoying ads. They are here for a reason because they probably make money, but you just don't want to put those things in. Most developers, especially small developers, don't feel comfortable. So that makes a lot of sense. Is it multiplayer like the board game?
No, it's not. It was actually oriented towards specifically solitaire play, because the other thing that annoyed me about the existing apps was that they were usually, some of them were multiplayer, which is fine. I don't object to that. But as a single player game, they would usually just like have a timer. It'd be like, how many words can you get in 3 minutes or something? Or you maybe play against an AI that just gets some random selection of words. And that never really sat right with me because it's very unsatisfying. You just get some words off the board. And I wanted it to be the case where you could actually get everything. Like you would be presented with a challenge and you could complete the challenge. And so it was really oriented towards that. So that was part of the philosophy behind reading the entire dictionary, is that I wanted it to be the case that most people would know all of the words that the game was trying to get you to guess. And I also added the system from, so there's this New York Times game called Spelling Bee, which has this interesting hint system where they'll tell you, so it's the same kind of thing where you're trying to get it's a different game, but you're trying to get a bunch of words. And it has an interesting hint system where it'll basically give you the number of words that start with a certain letter. Or the number of words that start with a pair of 2 letters. I can't remember exactly what their format is, but something like number of words that start with a pair of 2 letters. So I basically took that type of hint system and then applied it to Boggle. So there's a hint page that will tell you how many words you have left that start with T, for example. And it kind of helps you narrow down what you need to be looking for on the board. And the result is that you can actually finish games, which was a huge thing for me. And I think mine is the only app that lets you do that, which took a lot of work. So I can see why nobody does it, but it was definitely a goal of development.
Yeah, very cool. And then just to tie this back to Merchants of the Stars, the game we started talking about, I think you told me that you also released a demo for that on mobile. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's really interesting with these modern game engines like Godot. It's so easy to release on mobile and desktop. Like it's basically just a single button click. And you might get into some trouble. Like if you're years deep into a project, maybe you can't release to mobile. But if from the beginning you're always releasing to mobile and desktop all the time, and you're always testing it on both, it's pretty easy, honestly, to be able to do both. The main problem you have is just making sure the control scheme makes sense. Because for the most part, you don't really need to do anything. Like they have touch emulation from mouse and things like that to just make everything work fairly seamlessly. So yeah, I kind of thought, well, I mean, it's it was based on a mobile game anyway, so I might as well release it on mobile. Uh, and that has so it is released on mobile. Basically, the same demo that I have on Steam is released on mobile. It hasn't done tremendously well. I think there's been like maybe 100 downloads on Android and iOS each. But that's mostly because one, there's just not a lot of content because it's a demo. So I don't think it's a super attractive mobile game. Like you'll get bored of it pretty fast. But also, mobile is even more than a Steam game. You're really responsible for marketing it yourself, which I just haven't done for the mobile versions of those, aside from a little bit of my YouTube channel, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, that is the beauty of Steam, is that if you can at least get some initial traction, it seems to be the current Steam meta. If you can get a little bit of initial traction, they will pick it up and put it out there. So now the good news is you are working on a Steam game. So, okay, so as I was saying, you're working on getting the hole, and it seems like you're kind of jumping into the incremental craze, so to speak. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do in getting the hole to start?
Yeah, so first I'll question the premise. Actually, I like the question. I didn't. So I'll question the premise in the sense that it's not an incremental game.
Okay.
Which is a really common misconception. So I'm glad that you put it that way.
Perfect.
Which is kind of a slight problem that I have, which we can talk about in a second. But it's actually it's much more like a roguelike. And it basically came out of seeing a mobile ad where I basically there's like a bulldozer pushing some stuff into a hole. I thought that looks really satisfying. I could make something about pushing things into a hole, which is obviously a thought that a lot of people have had because there's a lot of hole games. But it started as like, what is the sort of platonic ideal of pushing things into a hole? So it just started with like this completely white plane with a circular hole in the middle, and you have this completely white pusher and just like a bunch of homogeneous bricks to push into it. And at that point, I was thinking of it probably more as an incremental game. But then I was really influenced by, I think I was playing the game Luck Be a Landlord at the time, which is it's not that old, but it's a little bit older of a roguelike now. And it's a slot machine roguelike, basically. So you get like these different tokens and they'll show up. And then depending on which combination of tokens you have on the screen, like as a result of your slot machine, you get different numbers of coins. And I thought that was kind of cool. Like I really liked the premise of it. And I thought, what if you take a roguelike like that, but instead it's pushing stuff into a hole? Like I just had these two totally separate obsessions and just gonna like shove them into one thing. So basically the idea is that you get a lot of different types of objects and they all have these unique abilities. So for example, a banana object so bananas stack with other bananas. So if you put a banana in, then while it's in your streak, so while you have been putting stuff in regularly and haven't broken your streak, then other bananas will be worth more points. Or there's things like piggy banks where they're worth a small number of points, but then if you break it and get the coins inside, then the coins are worth a lot of points. And there's a lot of just sort of like roguelike mechanics like this and combining stuff together. And it's all based around mostly based around what's in your streak. So it's trying to encourage you to put things in relatively quickly and regularly, but then you also have to think a little bit about what you're putting in. And then you get these chests that will give you the opportunity to get more items and upgrade yourself.
Yeah, I definitely am understanding the premise now. And I will say just the initial idea is pretty cool. Like just pushing things into the hole seems kind of like intriguing and fun already. Have you had any chance to do any play testing or give it to anybody to kind of feel out this incremental versus roguelike tension?
Yeah, so it's actually, there was a really interesting, I'll get to the actual question in a second about playtesting, but there was a really interesting GDC talk that I saw a few years ago about cursed problems in game design. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I can describe it briefly. But it's basically when you have a problem where you have two different design values that just fundamentally conflict with each other. And so you have to kind of like, there's no clean solution that will satisfy both of your values. And so in this case, the example is for a satisfying whole game like this, you really want to push in like a lot of volume of stuff. As much stuff as possible, as fast as you can. Right. But then to satisfy this roguelike, like thinky game type thing, you want to be very selective. You want to like, okay, I want to put in this thing and then this thing and then this thing and then this thing. And those things are just fundamentally opposed. And I kind of think of that as a cursed problem, which I only realized relatively recently, because they're just fundamentally opposed. So I think the idea of it being an incremental game is going to more towards that like volume side of things, and the roguelike thing is going more towards the specific, being more selective about what you're doing. And my personal just preference as a gamer is towards the more selective side. But I definitely have received some feedback where people are like, well, why don't you just, because in the game you kind of zoom out from the hole slowly, and stuff gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually when you're done a level, it zooms into the hole, and then you sort of zoom out again. And people are like, well, why don't you just zoom out forever? You just like get bigger and bigger stuff. Like you start putting in cars and houses and stuff, and it's definitely a good idea. And I think it's something I probably will explore as sort of a game mode at some point. I think the game's a little bit far down the other route.
Sure.
For now, it definitely is a little bit of a. So the reason I'm glad you asked, you sort of posed it as if it's an incremental game, is because this is what a lot of people think. I think when you see a whole game, because there are so many incremental whole games, especially now, that you're just like, well, there's a hole. It just seems like it should be an incremental game because it fits well, because you like sort of like want to put a lot of stuff in. So I definitely feel that tension for sure. Which I think is an interesting thing potentially to solve. And I have a lot of ideas around that as well. Like, for example, triggering, I've done some little prototypes that haven't really made it anywhere with like triggering, for example, bonus levels or bonus stages or something where you get to sort of satisfy the volume thing. And then it goes back to the more careful thing. And then you get this nice cycling, which I think will be an interesting avenue to explore. Like overall, in terms of feedback, I think it's been really interesting since I got it onto Steam. Once I released my demo, I wasn't expecting anything, because that's what happened with Merchants of the Stars. When I released it to Steam, nothing happened because I guess it didn't hit the Steam algorithm, and I didn't even realize there really was an algorithm for demos. And so that's kind of what I was expecting to happen this time. Like I had a little more wish lists than last time, but not that many more. So I just released it I released the demo on Steam and was just like, okay, now I'm going to start the marketing push. But the game or the capsule art or something was attractive enough that Steam just managed to pick it up on its own. And I actually got a ton of players, organic players, just naturally playing the demo, which was really cool, because it gave me more objective, because I tested it with a lot of people before, but I didn't have like aggregate data on how, for example, median playtime. And I never really had that for my other game either, because there just wasn't enough data of people playing it. So it was really interesting to see that. And I saw immediately that the median playtime was kind of low. In my opinion, it was like 10 minutes, which is fairly low. And I realized, like when I started thinking about that, I was like, this actually makes sense, because one game is about 10 minutes and there was no really good reason presented in the game to keep going. So immediately I thought, okay, like while there's this deluge of players just naturally coming, because it was like hundreds of people per day at that point, just naturally playing it, I need to quickly patch this. I hadn't been planning to do this. I was planning to like start doing YouTube videos. I was like, okay, I need to patch, like fix this game so that it has a higher median playtime. And this is my chance, because I can have the data to prove that it actually worked. So I immediately went in and was like, okay, what are some easy fixes I can do? And so what I thought was like, what is going to make them play again once they're done? And the most obvious one was making unlocks. So I ended up, so I had a bunch of skins. Actually, I think the initial release did have unlockable skins, but they didn't do anything different. They just looked different. So people would what they would do is like they'd finish, so you play as a cat paw that's knocking stuff into the hole. And then once you finish the first difficulty, you unlock a hot dog. And people found that delightful. They would see you unlocked a hot dog and be like, oh, I want to see what the hot dog looks like. And they would play as the hot dog, but they'd really quickly realize it's exactly the same game.
Yeah.
And so then they would just stop. Even though there's other stuff to unlock, but they realize, oh, the skins are just cosmetic, so it doesn't really matter. So it's like, okay, the easiest thing to do is just make every item, make all these things actually different. So they have different starting items and different starting upgrades. They don't have different physics or anything yet, but I do want to do something like that as well. And trying to remember, I think there were a couple of other small changes. Because there were some things people complained about. So there was people were not really complaining about, but remarking on, which was that the difficulty was too easy. So there were 3 difficulties: there's normal, hard, and super hard, and people were just instantly beating super hard because I've learned over time that if I find something to be, or like as the developer should find it sort of medium, and then people will find it really hard. Like this is this seems to be a general thing that you always underestimate how hard things are. So I definitely leaned really hard I leaned really into making things too easy. And then when people were actually trying the harder difficulties, they were just like, why is this so easy? This is weird. So I ended up making them much, much, much harder. And then people are still beating them. So I guess it's not too hard. And then I made one like extra unlockable, impossible difficulty. It's just impossible ? Is the name, but people have beaten that too. So, and that made a pretty big difference. It not as much as I maybe hoped for, but it went up to I think 16-minute median playtime.
Okay.
And I saw recently there was I can't remember where I saw it, but I think it was Thornady who said that for games you should have at least 80% of people playing past 10 minutes because Steam gives you the stat. And it's not there. It's at like 71% of people play past 10 minutes, which is okay because I can still see a lot of places to make improvements. So
yeah,
what I really like about this project is that there's so much scope for adding new stuff because just the way the objects work, they're very modular. So I can just like add. So right now there's 35-ish objects. But I can imagine adding 100 more. And it scales really nicely in effort because basically like I can add an object a day for a few months and then have a natural path towards something that feels more like a full game. Whereas with my previous project, Merchants of the Stars, like I didn't know what to do really to make it a bigger game. Whereas now it just sort of it feels like it naturally becomes a bigger game. Which is good.
Yeah. So is that the plan to kind of scale up the demo, is just adding more items? And then kind of as a follow-up to that, I think a common maybe roguelike design challenge is that if you have a super wide pool of items and once the player unlocks them all, it actually gets harder to get your combos. Have you thought about that or implementing any systems or level locks to different items, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that quite a bit. Because it is a very classic problem. And one way I really like, at least in the early game, to do it is just with basically item unlocks. You start out with a relatively small pool and then unlock them over time. Like that's sort of the Balatro approach is that eventually you have this giant pool of items. And then later game, it's a little bit less clear what to do. Because I think, for example, games like Vampire Survivors, they'll like give you things like skipping choices or banishing things or things like that. And I'll probably end up adding a system like that. Or there's a lot of items where you like once you're in a strategy, you kind of want more of that item. And so having the option to basically say like give me like some kind of upgrade that's like give me more like this item or more like that item.
Right.
I could see it as a good way of addressing that. Yeah, because right now I think even with the 35 items I have, it's getting close to the point of it's annoying sometimes when you don't see the item that you want. I did try to design it so that there's at least like 3 or 4 viable like strategies that I know are very powerful with just those items, but still you end up kind of doing something suboptimal a lot of the time, which is also something that's kind of okay with roguelikes because the loop is fairly short because the game currently only takes about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Which is another place also to improve because there's a lot of scope in this game for like endless or just like basically just extending it arbitrarily because it just ends right now kind of arbitrarily. Which it doesn't need to. I just didn't really balance it past that point.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Here's something that this is triggering for me, this conversation. I've always been curious for people that are designing a roguelike where you have these items and you're, kind of doing a build, so to speak. Have you, and maybe with 35 items, you haven't approached this yet, and that's okay. But I'm wondering if you have any sort of system or thought process for like how many within an archetype there are. So like, for example, I watched Mark Brown from Game Maker's Toolkit. When he built his puzzle levels, he had like a grid where it's like each puzzle matches up with one type of other puzzle. So I'm just curious if you have any sort of thoughts yet on, do you want completely like where they're not all matched up, or do you want a bunch of somewhat equal archetypes? And yeah, just how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think that's something. So I do think that way, in the sense of like I want there to be this universe of like these are the breakable items, and this universe of these are the sort of like enhance other items type things. And then within those, you have sort of a higher, like some of them are better than others, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten, or I haven't done anything with, say, like item rarity, which I think is a really important tool for that.
Sure.
Where you can say, like, this item is really overpowered, but it's okay
Yeah.
because you can maybe only get one per run or something like that. And yeah, I guess I don't have that much more intelligent to say on that subject, except that I think it is okay for items basically to be unbalanced because I mean, it depends on the game type, but in this game type, you are just presented with 3 to choose from. It's that type of game. And so if you see something really good, it's actually nice if it's not a homogenous choice where everything is exactly balanced and the same. You want to be excited to see something that's good show up.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. And I knew you were still in development, so no worries at all. And the beauty of a single player game is that if you make something broken, it's just fun. It's not going to ruin anyone else's experience. So that's very cool. I'm wondering if you've had to cut anything from the game.
Yes, sort of. I would say, I guess not something really from gameplay per se. I mean, I have sort of tweaked around with some stuff a little bit, like definitely changing item powers. But the main thing was really just cutting my entire aesthetic ideas, or I just like totally overhauled how it looked because I had this really, as I was talking about earlier with I just had this like platonic ideal, or what I felt was a platonic ideal of a whole game where you like have just white ground and a circle hole and just like brown stuff you push in with this white thing. And like really plain like black on white text, which in some circumstances I think did look good. The problem was it kind of didn't scale really well into a game that looked good, in my opinion. And so that was definitely a darling that I had to kill because I felt really strongly at the beginning that was the right artistic direction to take, especially because I'm not a very good artist myself. And so it's like, okay, if I can kind of like cling to this minimalism thing and make the minimalism look good, and then I'm set because I don't need to go really crazy with the art. But I think the issue that I really ran into with that was that to do minimalism really well is actually hard because as soon as you have something, like you have to really commit to the minimalism because as soon as you have something that's not minimal, it really clashes with that kind of aesthetic.
That makes sense.
And so, yeah, so I kind of killed that and I went to having more, I just have textured ground now. So I have like, I actually like it more now that I've played with it because it allows a lot more variety. So I can have different levels that have different textured ground. So I'll have like a badlands and a desert and a snow level and grassland level and stuff like that. So that was a really big thing. I think also, I guess it's not, I wouldn't really call it cut. Like from a technology point of view, I had to rework how the hole worked quite a bit. And I have the most successful video on my channel is about the hole technology, like how I implemented the hole in this game. And it's quite interesting, but I did have to re-implement it twice completely, which was quite annoying. But both times were for good reasons.
Yes, we will circle back to the YouTube channel. I do have some questions for you there. One more question sort of tying back to the beginning of this conversation, going back to roguelike versus incremental. Have you had to do anything in the Steam marketing or in the either on the Steam page or even just the way you're kind of proposing the game or showcasing the game to try to signal this is not an incremental game, or do you kind of just let it happen and then people kind of figure it out as they go?
Yeah, the messaging is a bit tricky. So besides it, I think people just think whole games are incremental. I think that's part of the problem. The other part is that so I have a different problem that's similar though, which is that the capsule art, which I think is really nice, which I had done by an artist.
It's really good.
The problem is it looks like too cozy. And so people are coming in thinking it's like cozy incremental game, but then it's actually not that cozy really when you're playing it, and it's not incremental. So I have a little bit of a messaging problem there.
Yeah.
I mean, my approach, I say the word roguelike as much as I can. So like the first word or maybe the second word in the description is roguelike.
Yeah.
And the tags I tried to orient towards saying it's a roguelike As well as I try to emphasize the aspect of choosing, because I think that makes it a little more clear. The distinction between incremental and roguelike is in incrementals, generally you can just buy anything almost, or there'll be like a tech tree. Whereas in roguelikes, generally you're like presented with the choice of here's a few things where you can choose and you have to choose wisely. And so I try to show that in the trailers and on the Steam page and so on to try to get across the idea that you're trying to make strategic decisions, and it's showing you the text because there's text on all the cards. It's like, this gives you +1 in this circumstance, which is a very like roguelike thing to say. Yeah, it's a challenge though. And it also, I mean, I can talk about my other problem with marketing, which is the name is, so it came about. So I'm just too impulsive with names, I think. Like I don't do enough market research ahead of time. Where it came about because I was playing the prototype of this game, and you literally, as you're playing this game, saying the words "get in the hole," like because you're about to lose, and you're like, to stop you from losing, you have to like get this thing in the hole, but it has some weight, and you're trying to shove it in there. So I thought, oh, that's a pretty funny name, and it is a good name in a sense, because people will like every single say content creator who's ever played it will start making like jokes about it at the beginning, which I guess that's good. But it's bad in the sense that if you Google "get in the hole" on YouTube, especially, all you get is like golf stuff, just like 100% golf stuff. Because it's a really common. I think it's a meme from. There's a movie where he yells this anyway. Which I didn't know about. Tough. I probably did subconsciously know about it, and that's probably where the name came from.
Yep.
But I didn't consciously know about it, so I probably should have looked into it a little bit more. And now it's a little bit too late because there's enough. Yep. I feel like there's enough mind share that I can't change it. And it's not a huge problem because you still find, if you look up "get in the hole" on YouTube, for example, you still find people playing it.
Right.
It's just flooded with like golf shorts also, which is kind of funny.
Yep. I apologize. I need to go attend to something really fast. I'll be back in 60 seconds. I'm so sorry.
Sure.
So sorry. We're a mess in the Go See household tonight. This will be a high editing video. That makes a lot of sense what you're saying with the title. Have you considered changing the thumbnail, or because it is really good, but yeah, maybe it's not quite communicating the thing you want.
So I have considered it. I don't think it's a good idea though, because I think it's proven its success just by the way that my demo kind of popped off more than I expected it to.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, it might be actually the capsule art that did that. So
Sure.
And it is like objectively good capsule art. It's just maybe it's communicating slightly the wrong thing. So I probably won't change it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and if people are playing the demo after going to the game and you're seeing pretty high medium play times and people are getting in there, you haven't totally missed the mark. It's not like it's wrong. It's just maybe not like if you could redo it, maybe it's not like perfect or something.
It's actually, in that vein, it's kind of funny because people will play it and say that they enjoyed it more than they expected, because I think they thought it was going to be a different game than they thought, which is kind of a weird backhanded compliment. I mean, it's a good thing, I guess.
Right.
But
yeah, that's really funny. That's awesome.
Or they're like, certain people have played it, and then at the end they'll say something like, "This isn't," because they played it thinking it was an incremental game. And then they'll say, well, "This isn't really my type of genre, but I thought it was a good game anyway," which is
That's high praise, actually, because I think unless you have a really fun game and they were expecting something different, that's not going to happen. So I actually think that's probably a signal of how fun the game is, maybe, which is really cool. You also said that you are planning for a June Next Fest appearance. Is that still on the table and what you're building towards?
Yeah, that is currently the plan, because I'd really like to. So this game started about last, I think it was around last October or so. I might be getting it off by a month or so, but and I really wanted to be able to complete it in a year. That was also part of it. I wanted to keep the scope constrained enough that I could do it in a year with the skills that I had. Yeah, so I instantly targeted the June Next Fest right away as the goal. And I think at this point, I don't have a good reason not to go for it. I think I would like to make a few more changes to the demo before it goes into Next Fest, to hopefully just bump up the retention a little bit. But overall, I think it'll be okay. And if I can release, like, say, because right now it's at around 900 wish lists, and if I could release with 2,000, I think I would be okay with that, and probably releasing sometime at the end of summer.
Yeah. Do you have any hope for what the game will do commercially? Like, do you have any particular either financial goals or just play goals? What would you consider a success, I guess, is kind of what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Um, Obviously, I have infinitely high hopes. I always have high hopes, but realistically, what I would hope for is that I can basically support myself, like justify doing another game after this without getting a job, because it's kind of like this is kind of it, in the sense of like, if this fails, I'll probably need to get a job and then like work on my next project
Sure.
as a side project. So that's a little bit stressful, but definitely the hope is that it's successful enough to justify that, and which we're talking, I don't know, at least a few thousand, at least,
Yeah.
and maybe tens of thousands, um, which we'll see, because the price point will probably be pretty low, because I think ultimately the length will be low, like probably, it depends, because it's a roguelike, so there's some inherent replayability, but probably to sort of complete the campaign will just be a few hours. So yeah, it'll be tricky. I'm trying not to have too many hopes. I've kind of learned to abandon hope at a certain point, and just try to do my best, and then whatever happens, happens. I've learned that's been a huge lesson from doing YouTube as well. It's because like every expectation I have is always completely wrong, and then when I don't have expectations, then things go better.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That sort of connects loosely. I'm working on a video that is diving into this idea of game dev success, or even just creative success, being luck versus skill. And one of the things I talk about, the reason it's connected in my brain, is I kind of talk about like making choices and then kind of distancing yourself from the outcome. So like you can make a good choice with the information you have that leads to poor results, but it doesn't mean you made a bad choice. So anyway, that ties together in my head. Do you think of game dev success or Steam success as we're at on this luck skill spectrum? How do you think about that?
I think the more I do it, the more I think it is that there is a lot of skill, and the more that I hear about other people's success or lack of success, I think there definitely is a lot of. So I think where the luck comes in is that there's a lot of weird human psychology that's really hard to understand. And it's really hard to predict what people will like. However, if you do things that you already know people will like, I think there can be a lot of predictability. That seems to be what I see from other people.
I might have lost you. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
I got you back.
Are we back? Yeah, I lost you for a second there.
Oh yeah, I'll just start again.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the more that I see, the more I think that there is a lot of skill involved. I think there's definitely a huge element of luck as well. But I think where a lot of the perceived luck comes from is just in how complicated human psychology is, and like what people actually like. So I think a really astute observer of trends and like understander of psychology, a lot of that, if you understand that stuff, like that is a skill that I think can reduce the luck a lot. And so I don't think I have that actually very well. I think what I'm good at is I mean, obviously I was a professional programmer for many years, so I'm really good at the implementation of things, and I really like making things that feel juicy and stuff like this, and like making little funny things in the game. And I feel like I'm good at that stuff, but I'm less good at the big picture, like what do people actually want to play? And I feel every time I do a project, actually, I feel like, oh man, I should have done way more prototypes before this.
Sure.
But I intentionally, because I think that's a big part of the luck versus skill thing too, is that it's not, if you try to get lucky 10 times, then you're more likely to be lucky than if you try to get lucky once, obviously. Or it's like, there's some skill in doing that, right? There's some skill in getting lucky just by trying more things. And I haven't been very good historically at that.
Sure.
But I think part of the problem for me is that I know how hard it is to finish projects, and so I really try to avoid changing what I'm doing as much as possible so that I can actually finish things. And part of that is like, even if it's not quite working 100%, I don't want to abandon it just because of that. Like if it's working, we're firing at like 80%, I'm like, this is good enough. I'm going to keep going, because otherwise I might jump ship to something that's working even worse, or like I'll waste all this effort. So
identifying that psychology skill piece is huge in considering that. Another thing that I found really helpful in talking to Thornity and Aramis was just this idea of like getting a content creator to play your game is lucky, But if you email 1,000 of them, maybe that's not so lucky. And so kind of increasing your chances at luck is sort of a piece of my thoughts. I'll have a whole video released by the time this is out if anyone cares for my take. But yeah, I like that angle. Speaking of content creators, actually, you got Gray Still Plays and Gojo to play it, who are both pretty decently sized, especially Gray Still Plays. Did you do anything for that, or did that happen naturally?
Yeah, so interestingly, Gojo, who I think that video has like 30,000 views or something like that at this point.
Nice.
That was totally organic. He actually found, so
Wow.
what I was talking about with the demo just popping off randomly, he must have found it on Steam. I don't actually know, but I did not email him because that was before I had sent out any emails to anybody. Gray Still Plays, I did email. He didn't reply to the email, but a couple weeks after I sent it, video popped out. And I only discovered it because I saw in my wish lists that there was a huge uptick. Like not huge, but there was like 30 in a day, which is not normal.
Interesting.
And I was like, something happened. I have to go look on YouTube and see if there's a video. And there was. It ultimately didn't. So I definitely had this perception ahead of time that you get played on like a giant channel, because Gray Still Plays has, say, like, I think like 6.5 million subscribers or something like that.
It's in the millions. Yep.
I was like, oh, once that happens, you've got it made. Like, that's going to be thousands of wish lists. That was not the case for me. It might be the case for other people. For me, it was like 120, to be honest, which was a little bit sad because, I mean, he enjoyed it. Like, the video was very positive. So I don't know why it didn't translate that well. Because I think for example, I know for Aramis in the Black Hole game, that Gray Still Plays was quite impactful in terms of wish lists. And that's the one data point that I have. So I don't know what it is. I mean, it's a little bit of a different game. Style of game that maybe connects a little bit less with that audience, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, and I've had a bunch of other ones played as well. There's one other, I can't remember what the channel is called, but there's one other one that got around 30,000. And that one was even, so the Gojo one, it added a few, but it was a little bit mixed up with the initial Steam algorithm stuff, so I can't really tell. There was another one that had about 30,000 views that did very little. And I think that's also an audience problem because, and by very little, I mean like maybe 10 or like less than 10.
Wow, interesting.
Because it was like a very high energy, like hyper kind of presentation, which I feel like doesn't necessarily match exactly the audience of the game. So yeah, it was a really interesting learning experience. I found it more successful to do my, sorry, just back to the content before I get to that, but for content creators, I did end up emailing about 100 people overall. And out of those, probably got like 5 to 10 videos. And most of them were on the smaller side. So it's an interesting trade-off because I think when you email the really big ones, you're much less likely for them to make a video.
Right.
But the payoff is bigger. But then if you go to like a huge swath of smaller ones, they're way more likely, it seems. Because a lot of the smaller ones, it's just that you get a lot less views from them. So you hope to sort of create a snowball effect from the smaller ones. And then some of the smaller ones, there were quite a few small videos also made as a result, probably, of the Gray Still Plays video.
Yep.
But no really medium ones. I honestly have a bit of a hard time finding good sort of medium-sized content creators, because my strategy is pretty much to just like look for people who are playing similar games. It's very biased towards the big ones because you'll see like tons of like Gray Still Plays videos and like all the ones that I've already emailed. So trying to really narrow down to the people, because you really want I really wanted the people in the 10,000 to 20,000 kind of subscriber range because they're more likely to actually respond to an email.
That makes sense. Yeah. Just one more piece of investigation. I'm actually not that familiar with Gray Still Plays channel. Is he more of an incremental gamer by chance? Like, is there a chance that his audience is thinking incremental? Is he actually a roguelike channel? I'm actually not familiar.
He's just variety, I think. He plays a lot of different things. That just reminds me of another problem with those videos, actually, which is that they seem to just perform badly on their channels. Like, if I looked at the videos around mine, they basically mine is like in the lower third of performance of videos of all of them, which actually could, generally speaking, they had my capsule art as the thumbnail. I think the Gray Still Plays one didn't. It just had a picture of a hole. But I wonder if it's sort of the same problem as I was having with the just like misunderstanding of what it is, or like people think it's it's
Right.
one thing and it's not, or something like that. So I don't
Interesting.
know. It's all interesting data.
Yeah, very interesting. I'll be curious to see what the game does. I mean, speaking of YouTube, it's a great chance to transition to your own YouTube channel, because it's something you know about on your Jeremy Makes Games channel. Can you just tell me about what you're doing over there? What are you doing on your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of opinions out there about devlogs as a marketing tool. I definitely did make this channel originally as a marketing tool, or that was the plan. It's basically to do devlogs and control my own fate. I also made it because I just really wanted to learn how to do YouTube. I enjoy YouTube as a platform.
Yep.
So there's a combination of things there. It's been I don't so in terms of the devlog or not debate, I would say it's probably not worth it, at least so far. My hope is that you get compounding, basically like compounding gains over time.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel really strongly that you need, as a game developer, you need some form of audience somewhere. That's sort of like a core, like you need some core fans, because you really need people who can play test things for you. It's very hard to find just random people off the street who will play test things for you, off the street metaphorically on the internet, who will play test for you. But if you can establish, say, a Discord, because I also have a Discord, so if you can establish a Discord with a few people who you can count on, a YouTube channel where you can get, say, even hundreds of views, thousands of views to something, that doesn't need to be what causes your game to be successful, but it can be what causes you to have a little community that you can use to bounce ideas off of, which I think is really important, to not just develop in a vacuum. So I have found it super useful in that respect, because I get a lot of feedback through comments and through people who join the Discord and so on. I have also seen success directly through wish lists. I've gotten quite a few wish lists that have clearly come from videos, because I will see the numbers like go up after a video that has a lot of views. It's definitely, well, sorry, I can't say definitely, but it's probably not worth the effort, because YouTube is, say it's like 40% of my time is doing YouTube, because it just takes a lot of time to edit together these things. I've gotten faster over time, but it's still a huge time commitment. But yeah, I think what's nice is that YouTube is the kind of thing where you can build and build and build. So you get more and more subscribers, and then you get this bigger and bigger chance on any video of it exploding. It's also a thing where like you're always hopeful. I'm just constantly hopeful that, I'll make a certain short or a video, and that one will get 100,000 views, or that one will get 1,000,000 views, and then that will be what, causes something good, like wish lists or whatever. And I think it's one of those things with the luck where you're just like, I wanted to give myself more shots, because ultimately, if you don't have some outlet like that, I really don't like relying on emailing content creators only, or really relying only on the Steam algorithm, just because it feels so out of my control. Like, it's very stressful. Whereas the YouTube thing, it's still kind of out of my control, like if people watch it or not, but there's a lot that's in my control as well, like the video quality. I can also just like keep putting out more and more videos. And I've already seen some success, so I have some idea that if I do this, I'll get that. Whereas with the content creators, it feels so much more random.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, one more pause. I have another something going off out there. So sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I promise it is normally not this chaotic. Tonight is just a bit of a night.
That's
my
okay.
wife got held up.
I'm used to recording videos and like cutting out 90% of the airtime. So
yeah, this will be a highly edited one. So, interestingly enough, I think you have just given me a new take in my 30 plus episodes of this show. I love this framework shift of, people ask when they say, is YouTube worth it? They almost always mean like for wish list. Well, like you said, in terms of time, it's basically like devlogs in that sense are like not worth it. But when you take this new mindset of, can I find 20 playtesters for my game? Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. Like, that's such a good, healthy mindset. And then also just the bonus. It's almost like a bonus then whenever you're taking that framework, if you get people to go wishlist your game or getting even a little bit of initial traction. So love that mindset. That's really cool. Do you with your YouTube channel?
I would just say there is a huge cost, which I can't overstate. Like the cost, it's not even 40% of the time. That is a cost. I'd be kind of okay with that, or more okay with that, but there's also the cost of just like splitting your attention so much. So like a lot of the time I'm in content creator mind where I'm like, how do I clickbait
Right.
this video, and like how do I make this video successful? Or like I'll put out a video and it won't perform and I'll be like, oh, I just wasted all this time, which is like hugely mentally draining. So I will caution people on that it's like a huge, like YouTube is psychologically damaging. Like I see why so many people
Mm.
burn out on it, because it's very random. Like I know why people are superstitious about the algorithm, basically. And so, and I'm a very like one track mind kind of person, where it's very hard. Like my ideal way to do it is that I would be like, develop game in the morning until 2 p.m., then work on video. Like then I'll be tired, I can't program anymore, I'll work on video editing. But I just can't do that. Like my brain doesn't work that way. It always is like, I'll develop solidly for 3 weeks and then I'll spend a week doing videos and then 3
Interesting.
weeks
Yeah.
developing and 1 week on video. Like I can't really like partition it more finely than that, because it just feels like such a different brain space to be in that it takes me a day or two to transition between them. Yeah. So
Interesting.
anyway, I'll just add that caution to my. I do like YouTube. I, and I think it's another thing where you have to really want to do YouTube. It's not like a
Yeah.
strategy you can use unless you want to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the episode that will air just before yours is with a developer named Nolan Royalty. He does more like weird stuff than traditional games, but he dabbled in YouTube, and he was saying a lot of his content creator friends, and he sort of felt this tension too of like he'd be working on his project, but then feel this like itch in the back of his mind of like, should I be recording this? Like, is this interesting? And just sort of always having this like extra lens and this extra mental load on. Do you feel that when you're working on your games?
Yeah, I do feel that. And my strategy is just to totally ignore it. Like I never record
Yeah.
anything
Okay.
when I'm working on, well, almost never record anything when I'm working on the game. Usually if I record anything, it's just to like send to my Discord to ask people what they think. Because yeah, it's so distracting. It's so hard to know what you need when you're thinking, like, because I don't even really have a good concept of what the next devlog is going to be
Sure.
when I'm in the middle of development. Because usually I find that a generic devlog is not a good strategy, because people just don't seem to really care for the most
Right.
part, unless it's something very where the game's already popular. You need some kind of theme, like you need something interesting about it to like some
Yep.
kind of hook. And so generally I will not know what that is. So I'll just go back usually I'll just like sort of engineer the current game to make it look like I'm making progress. Like I'll engineer the current state to change it,
Yep.
to regress it. And then, or I'll go back maybe in the commit history and just go to something earlier and take some videos after the fact.
Yeah, that's a good word of advice, because if anyone is trying the devlog thing, I can imagine that getting overwhelming very quickly. So I think your strategy is probably pretty good to just not worry about it. I'll figure it out how to make it to get the visual I want later.
Yeah, I think the thing I mainly miss out on is like a lot of devlogs get humor value from bugs. Like it'll be like, this thing's going crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe ideally, one should take videos of that when it's available. I usually don't, because I'm just not in the mind space to do it. So I'm not really thinking about that one. Usually I'm like, oh, no, there's a bug, I have to fix that immediately.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think that kind of approaches this question of like, are you a game dev first or a YouTuber first? I think for the person that's trying to be a YouTuber first that also makes content, and then I think you need to like record a lot. But I think there's also a world where what you're doing, if you're going game dev first and YouTube is sort of this extra tool, I think it's probably okay. But yeah, getting bugs are probably like the most viral things. I still to this day have like this, it's maybe just a gif of like this giant bunny rabbit in some game stuck in my head. Like, I don't know, it just really struck me. So those things just stand out. I do have one more last topic I want to talk to you about, because I just think it's super interesting and maybe blends in with game dev a little bit, but it's sort of different. I saw how in one of your videos that you mentioned that you make your own physical card games, and you even made like over $200 from that, just from like a single TikTok. So how did you get into making card games?
Right. Yeah, so this was quite a few years ago. I think in 2016 is when we made, and by we I mean my wife and I and my sister-in-law worked on this extended deck, where we wanted to make a standard deck of cards but just add some extra suits, which is an idea that other people have done, but we had our own take on it. So we added 3 extra. Actually, I have it literally right here, because I was taking a video of it. This has been sitting here since
Very
that
cool.
$200. I'll just show you an example. So for example, we had this Queen of Shields, which is another red suit, and like there's this 6 of bottles. So we added a few extra suits like that. and this was way back, so 10 years ago. And then just last December, well, I guess I should give a little more background. So there's this website called Drive Through Cards, which does print on demand of cards. And we thought, okay, this would be fun. We should actually print this deck out. Because we basically had like larger extended family events where we wanted to play bigger card games, like bigger versions of euchre and stuff like that. So that's why we made it. And we got it printed through Drive Through Cards. And because we did that, just anybody can buy it on Drive Through Cards. And over the years, so in the last 10 years, many people have bought it. We've made, I think I don't remember exactly. I don't know, I put in my video, but I think over $1,000 of revenue
Cool.
from those cards, just kind of as passive income because we don't do anything with it. We just uploaded a PDF many years ago. And for some reason, last December, I decided to make a short about the design, basically just like a little game design short about the card game. And on YouTube, I post everything all the shorts that I make, I post on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. But I don't really pay attention to TikTok or Instagram because I don't know anything about them and I don't use them. And this short did not perform well on YouTube, so I just kind of forgot about it. But then a few days later, we just started getting all these email notifications about orders of this deck, and I thought, what? How did that happen? Did this happen from like the 1,000 shorts views I got on YouTube? That seems weird. And then eventually I realized that it was coming from TikTok, where this thing had gotten like hundreds of thousands of views. I think it also, I don't remember if that one got hundreds of thousands of views on Instagram as well. And yeah, it just went super viral on TikTok and converted pretty well into actual sales. I think it probably had something to do with it being December, so it's kind of a good like Christmas gift for people. Yeah. But yeah, it was totally unexpected. I don't even know why I made this short in the first place. I just saw these cards. I was like, I just remembered something interesting about when we had made them. We made a couple of our other card games as well, because there's this game called Set, which is this like pattern. You try to make these like pattern matched things out of cards. It's a little bit hard to describe, but it's very popular with math people. So this is how I knew about it. And we made an alternative. So this was, I guess, game development I did even before Toggle. I made this website where you could play Set, but we also had an alternative version. It just had some like variant rules, and we wanted to make a deck out of that. So that's actually how we started, was making that deck first, which is not basically sold anything. But then we had used the experience to make the deck of cards, which is much easier to market.
Yeah, did you learn anything from any of those experiences that you feel like later translated to game design, or was that just maybe even just a little initial foray into it?
Well, it was a really interesting experience because I realized how much as a software person, it was such a weird process because I made like a PDF that looked perfect. Like it had all the cards in it and they looked all perfect. And I sent it to the printer and they came back and it looked terrible because I didn't realize that you had to use, like they use CMYK ink, and K stands for black.
Interesting.
And if you don't use black, it looks bad because the ink isn't exactly put. So it'll make it out of the CMY, the other colors, and it won't exactly overlap perfectly. So you get these little like fringes of blue and stuff. And I realized, I actually know nothing about ink. I guess I should learn a little bit about this so that I can make this correctly next time. And the other thing about it that's so different is the iteration time, because you send them this PDF and they have to print it and they have to mail it to you and so on. So that takes, a couple of weeks at minimum, which was pretty interesting. I think in terms of like, it definitely convinced me that I didn't want to do more physical games just because of the iteration time. And I didn't really want to, and it's so fiddly dealing with printers and things like that. Whereas there's a lot of problems with video game development as well, but there are more problems that I'm used to handling. And the iteration cycles are really fast. So it's a lot easier for my particular brain to handle dealing with those problems.
Yeah, that's extremely interesting. And that does kind of cover all the things that I wanted to ask you about, but I will leave you with this one final question. So this is the Dev Dream podcast, and I created it to inspire mostly myself, but honestly also others. And I always find it inspiring to hear about the sort of aspirations of other developers that have cool things going on. So I'm curious for you, Jeremy, what would you say is your game dev dream in this season of life?
Yeah, so for me, I started doing this because the reason I quit my job and started developing games is because I'm a very creative person. I have the kind of brain where if I'm not doing something creative every single day, then I get depressed. Mm-hmm. And so over the years, that's taken many forms, from doing music and other things, and game development and programming projects and all this kind of stuff. But a few years ago, so I'm now 37, and a few years ago while I was working, I realized like I'm going to be 40, I'm going to be 45 before I know it, I'm going to be 50, and like working in software not really like fulfilling this creative impulse that I have. So I really wanted to just go, okay, I have a little bit of money right now because I've been working for so long. Can I go and do something? Can I make my job to do something really creative? And video games was the thing that I managed to latch onto, um, as something that I uh, ultimately really enjoyed making. And it has a lot of different creative things where you can bounce around and do different stuff. And so my dream is basically to be able to do something creative every day, and hopefully make it my job. It being my job is not all sunshine and rainbows because it is very stressful sometimes, especially because I'm trying to sort of force it to be successful. But that's the dream. That's the dream.
Well, Jeremy, that's a fantastic dream. I hope you're able to make it a reality. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me on. It was really fun talking to you.